Hello and welcome back to Nothing Fancy. Today I'm going to try to overhaul my Honda Rancher four-wheeler for less than $700. Let's see what we can make happen. I got my helper with me today. She's going to help me take care of the old four-wheeler here. I want to give you guys a little bit of a closer up view, kind of let you know what my plans are. As far as what I mean by overhaul, we're not going to be rebuilding the engine or anything crazy like that, but I do want to do a full service on this four-wheeler. I want to change all of the fluids, change the filters. We got to get some new brake pads put on the front. We've almost got no brakes. There's a little bit of brake left, but not much. And my wife and kids do ride this four-wheeler, so I want to make sure that it's safe and good to go for them. Tires. Tires are they're pretty old. I'm pretty sure these are the original tires that came on it. So we got some new tires we're going to put on there. We're also going to do our best attempt at painting these plastics. Now we're not going to do anything fancy, hence the name of the channel, but we're going to just try to do a cheap rattle can job just to try to clean these up. The plastics for the most part are in pretty good shape. Got a little bit of a crack right here, but this is the only really big issue that we have with the plastics. But I'm going to try to clean this up. We're going to rattle can, try to get some of these scratches out. So I will sand it and actually prep it properly. But again, we're not doing no $1,000 paint job on a four-wheeler that's honestly just going to get scratched up and just do some trail riding as well. We're going to open up the rear end, change the rear diff oil. That has probably never been changed, so that should probably smell wonderful. We're going to change out the coolant. We're going to change the oil, spark plug, air filters, all that good jazz. So I think what we're going to do first is I want to begin disassembling the four-wheeler, get all of the plastics off, and probably won't be able to get those painted or prepped today. But once we get those off, then we're going to move into the mechanical stuff and start servicing all of the components that are underneath. I don't know what in the flip this thing right here is. I have never seen such a thing in my life. Trying to back it out, I am, as you can tell, gouging up this black piece. I wanted to be able to take this off separately, but what I'm going to try to do to keep from tearing this up anymore is to try to take this piece off along with the entire back half. Not sure if that's going to work, but that's what we're going to try. So there it is, broke down. A good afternoon spent doing that. Took longer than I expected it to. One thing I will highly recommend if you're wanting to do something like this is get you some of these storage cases so you can mark where you pull your bolts from, and that'll make your reassembly process a good bit easier. So now that the plastics are off, let's get into the mechanical side of this. I'm going to hook the battery back up to it so we can let the oil warm up, get ready to drop that and start servicing this four-wheeler. This is the service kit we're going to be using for it. I got this on Amazon for like $60. It came with almost everything. Come with an air filter, new spark plug NKG even. And we got a new oil filter, 3 quarts of 10W30 Pro Honda oil, and it came with 16 ounces of gear oil. And I think it even has like a little paper funnel somewhere down in here, yeah, that you can use. There's my manager over there, making sure that I'm working hard. And I probably won't use this, but it's at least cool that they do have it. So if you don't have a funnel, you got something to get you by there. I got the four-wheeler warmed up. Let's go drop the oil. Now I'm just guessing here, but I imagine that this rear end oil has probably never been changed. So I imagine it's probably gonna look pretty rough. Probably gonna smell pretty bad, but I got the undercover off. There is a bolt on the bottom right side of it. That's the drain bolt. And there is another bolt right here. When we go to refill it, we will take this bolt out and we will wait for the gear oil to start weeping out of this hole. You don't wanna fill this whole thing up, but once it starts weeping out right here, we'll know that the gear oil is changed and ready to rock and roll. Tally ho, lads, here we go. Let's see what she looks like.
What you doing, Daddy?
Ooh.
I'm about to move my car.
She got, oh, maybe a little water in that. It's kind of milky looking. This is, whoo, stinking. That's enough for the day. I had several hours into it, and I think I'm going to take a break here and stop and get some dinner. We got parts strewn out everywhere, so get some of that cleaned up. Right now I'm just letting it run, let those new fluids circulate, let that coolant circulate, make sure that everything's good and topped off. Still got to do the brakes. I want to change the brake fluid, but I want to do that whenever I change the front brake pads. But we're going to do all that when we pull off the tires and get some new tires. Hopefully have some time to work on it tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday. Sundays are usually kind of a busier day for me. But we'll see. I know this video is taking a little bit longer to get out, but this is a pretty drawn out process, and it's a little bit longer form content, but stick around and we'll see what else we can do. Okay, so today is Sunday, and I don't have a whole lot of time to dig into some of the bigger things. So I'm trying to type some little small things that I can get done kind of quickly. I'm hoping today to go ahead and do the brakes, get the brake pads changed on the front, and hopefully get the brake fluid changed out as well. But I'm also taking some of the smaller metal parts, some of the parts of the chassis off to go ahead and treat them for rust and get them ready for paint. So I'll show you kind of what I've got going on here. This is the undercover for the rear end that I took off. And these are just the little foot pegs. They're dry to the touch, but the rust reformer I'm using is just Rust-Oleum out of a spray can. I'll show you guys what I'm using, what I plan on actually top coating these things with. They're dry, but the can says to allow it to dry for 24 hours, and it hasn't quite been 24. I did this one yesterday off camera, and it's probably been about 15 hours. These I just did a few minutes ago. They're dry to the touch, but it's going to be a little while before they're ready for paint. So I'm hitting these with a wire brush. First, knocking off as much surface rust as I can, and I'll show you what products I'm using. This is the rust treatment that I'm using. It's just Rust-Oleum Rust Reformer. It says it instantly converts rust to a protected, paintable surface. And I've used this stuff before, and it works pretty well. I got this on sale at Harbor Freight. I can't remember exactly what the sale was, but with the coupons that they did, it was cheaper to get it from there than anywhere else. Once this sits for 24 hours, I'm going to come in behind it with this cheap Harbor Freight brand spray paint. I think this is actually discontinued because it was a clearance item when I bought it, which is why I got it, because it was so cheap. And again, we're just doing a four-wheeler here, so nothing terribly fancy. I think this will work just fine. So once those parts dry, I'm going to get some more small parts off too and get those treated. Once those dry for 24 hours, I'm then going to come over and top coat it with this. But let's dive into the brakes and see what we can make happen. Okay, so the front right brake pads have been changed. Wasn't too terribly bad. One of these caliper pins did give me a bit of a hard time. You'll probably see that in the video. The kit that I'm using, I got off of Amazon. I didn't pay a whole lot for it. I can't remember the exact amount. I'll put a picture of it in the video. She's working on her wagon there. And it did come with rear brake shoes. I'm not going to attempt to do the rear brakes because we don't really use the rear brakes a whole lot. And it's a good bit more involved to replace the rear brake shoes. So we're just going to do the front brake pads. And this was a pretty good deal on Amazon. So now I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process on the other side. I'm not going to video that, but we'll get that done. And then we'll work on bleeding this brake master cylinder. Okay, so I used to have a brake bleeder kit that I have put somewhere that I cannot find. So I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but I have my waste container down here. I think I'm just going to try to open up this little bleeder valve. And I know it's going to be a little messy, and this stuff's pretty corrosive, so I'm trying not to make too much of a mess. But we're just going to try to bleed it out without having any sort of proper tools, and get ready to open up the master cylinder. I imagine this thing's probably never been opened, so it's probably going to be fairly tough. From my understanding, brake fluid actually attracts water, so even though this is a sealed system, more than likely there's probably some water in here, and I imagine these bolts are going to be, or these screws are going to be pretty tough to get out. So I'm going to get that opened up and get something to open up this bleeder down here and see what we can get pushed out of this system. Well, I think that's going to do it for a Sunday afternoon. We got all of the mechanical stuff taken care of at this point. We got the brakes done today, so those are good to go. Got new brake fluid, got some smaller parts back here with some rust treatment on it, even got one of them painted. So the next step is to start moving into getting some of these plastics a little bit more disassembled and getting them prepped, start getting it cleaned up, and hopefully get ready for reassembly. Okay, so we are here at the shop, and I got a couple of small plastic pieces that I brought with me. The gas tank cover and a couple of the side panels. I'm gonna go ahead and try to hopefully get them prepped up today and get them in primer. I make a nickel while the boss makes a dime, and that's why I prep my own personal stuff on my lunch hour. Well, we got the parts primered. I did 3 medium wet coats on these. It took a little over one can to do all of this, along with this little piece that goes into the side of this gas cover. So we're gonna let that cure for a little while, and we gotta get the other plastics in here and get them prepped up, and hopefully we'll be moving to paint pretty soon. Okay, so I actually made a mistake on painting these plastics. I forgot to do a pretty important step before putting our filler primer on, and you can tell that our primer is coming off very easy just using my fingernail. So what we actually have to do, I'm gonna have to strip all of this filler primer back off, and we're gonna need to use an adhesion promoter first. So we'll strip this off. I'm gonna come back and hit it with this adhesion promoter, and then I'm gonna redo the very same steps that I did with the filler primer. So I'll do one coat of this, a good medium wet close coat over all of these plastics. Thankfully I didn't do the big ones yet. I still have them over there. And then we'll follow this up with 3 coats of the filler primer. But you're gonna have to have this adhesion promoter on these plastics, or else the minute that a branch or something scrapes against that, it's just gonna start coming off. I have 2 coats of filler primer on this, and we are gonna do a 3rd coat, but what I'm doing in between the 2nd and 3rd coat on these plastics, a lot of times, I don't know how well you can see it in the camera, but there's like a fuzziness to this primer. So what I'm doing in between the 2nd and 3rd coat is, this coat is already flashed off, so I'm just hitting it with some 500 grit on a sanding sponge just to kind of level out a little bit of that fuzziness, and then we're gonna come over and top coat that with some more filler primer and then sand that as well. And also, while I got it right here, I can show you guys how we are going to repair this crack in the plastic. So what I did is I just took a drill bit and I drilled out the very end of the crack on both sides, and that'll help keep that crack from spreading. And then I drilled holes all along the crack here. We're just going to use some zip ties and kind of do like a stitching pattern to kind of help hold that plastic together and keep it from cracking anymore. So this is where the fun begins. I'm gonna start painting this with just some cheap Rust-Oleum that I got off of Amazon. I got a 6-pack of this for I can't remember. I think I got this and a 6-pack of clear for around $90. I went with this because it's kind of a similar color to the original, but it was also just some of the cheapest stuff that I could find on Amazon. So we got this sanded, ready to go. Let's start hitting it with some spray paint. So we have 3 layers of color now on most of our plastic pieces, and our scratches, while they didn't necessarily go away, they do look a good bit better. So for the most part, I'm pretty satisfied with how this turned out. You can see the color, this one's still drying. The color is pretty similar to the original. We're gonna let all this flash off real good, and then we're gonna come back and add at least 2 layers of clear coat. And I'll show you what clear coat I'll be using later. The only thing we haven't painted yet is this rear piece. And I've already done 2 coats of primer, did a little bit of sanding and added a 3rd coat. There's still a good bit of fuzziness in here, and some of these scratches are really deep. So I think what I'm gonna do is let this dry a little bit longer, and I'm gonna hand sand this one more time and use what last little bit of filler primer I have left. Come over it, spray it a 4th time, and then we'll sand it and get it caught up with this stuff. But for now, we're going to let that dry and get ready to start clear coating these plastics. All right, well, everything is almost done. We got the gas cover cleared. We got these two, let me get out of the shadow off of it. We got these two side panels cleared. We got the front cleared. That's still drying with primer. I will go ahead and tell you that I had way too much paint and way too much clear coat. I think I used maybe 2 cans of the paint on this, and I will need a little bit more for that. And I've used 1.5 cans of clear coat. So 6 cans was way too much of a purchase, but I guess I got plenty of touch-up material if I ever do need it. But just for reference, if anybody else decides to do this as well, probably 3, at the most 4 cans of color and clear is more than enough to do your 4-wheeler plastics. And for these black plastics, I'm going to do something a little bit different. The plastics, for the most part, are in pretty decent shape. I mean, some of this, like the grill's cracked, and this little battery cover is cracked. So I will drill these cracks out. Not really going to worry too much about what's going on here, but to kind of revitalize these black plastics a little bit, only thing I'm going to do is take a red scuff pad, and I'm going to kind of wet sand, or really kind of wet scuff these plastics, just to clean them up a little bit and just to put a little bit of a scratch in there. And then we're going to do an adhesion promoter, and then we're just going to top that with a clear coat. I have plenty of clear coat left over, so I was just going to try to use some plastic restoration chemicals on this, but being as I have so much clear, I think it would be a little bit easier and quicker just to clean these up real good and to hit it with the rattle can. All right, so we are back at the home front today, and I'm hoping that we can begin working on some of the frame, getting it a little cleaned up, and putting some rust reformer on some of the parts that you can kind of easily see with the plastic still on. Unfortunately, we do have a chance of rain for today, so we got that going against us. But hopefully, if we can work quick enough, we can at least get the coat of rust reformer on here and get it flashed off before the rain moves in. And also hopefully start working on getting these tires off of the rims. I've got one done over here already, just using this it's a Pittsburgh manual tire changer. Got it from Harbor Freight, and once we got the tire off, I just took a wire wheel on a drill like this, and also a sander with some 220 grit sandpaper, which is a little too aggressive, but it's all I have. And it works pretty good. So hitting this with the wire brush and with the sander, and then following up with the rust reformer, and again we're going to let this sit for 24 hours, and then we're going to come back and put our paint on it. Well, I managed to get the rust reformer on everything just in time, but actually had just a few hours to kind of dry before the rain sets in, so it should be fine. I went ahead and this tire that I did yesterday, I had set for almost 24 hours, not quite. So I did go ahead and top coat it, and I just used the chassis and grill paint from Harbor Freight that I showed you guys previously. So I'm going to let this dry for a little while, and then I'm going to attempt to mount one of these tires. I've never done this before, so this is my first time. But this is a pretty nifty little tool once you figure out how to use it. It made getting the tires off pretty easy once I figured out how to actually utilize this contraption here. But I got this on sale. I'm wanting to say for like around 50 bucks. So if you think you'll do a lot of tires, this is a pretty good little find to keep around. And I just, as you can see, got it mounted down to a pallet so I can actually take these little lag bolts out and reuse the pallet somewhere else. While I'm waiting on the wheels to cure a little bit longer before I put that other wheel on, there is a small section of the engine that is visible even after the plastics are on. So I've cleaned this up a little bit, and I tried a lot of different things before finding what actually worked best with the tools that I have. So I ended up taking a wire wheel and just kind of lightly going over this section of the engine, and then I followed that up with some heavy metal polish made by chemical guys, just to kind of smooth out some of those scratches from that wire wheel. And I think that made it pretty enough that hopefully once we get the plastics back on, it won't look like all this old cruddy engine, but it'll kind of have a little bit of a newer polished look. That was way harder to put on than it was to take off. I don't want to do this again, but I got to do it 3 more times. I'll go ahead and tell you guys, mounting a tire is not terribly fun, but it was my first time, so I did have a little bit of struggles and a bit of a learning curve to do there. I will go ahead and tell you, if you're using a small air compressor, what I have over here, you'll see in the video I had to use a strap to kind of hold the tire to keep the air from just escaping. But with the ratchet strap and a little bit of perseverance, it finally set the bead. And I think it looks pretty snazzy, if I say so myself. Now we just got to do this 3 more times, and Lord willing, hopefully sometime tomorrow, we can begin putting the Honda Rancher back together and hopefully finish this project. So here we are 10 days later and finally have the Honda Rancher project complete, and only 3 days past schedule of when I originally intended to finish this. This is my wife's old four-wheeler, and I wanted to kind of make it look like it did whenever it came off of the factory floor with a little bit of difference. I did black out the wheels just because that was the paint I had, and we were doing a budget build on this. I know we said we were going to do a little bit less than $700, and we met that goal. Probably the most expensive thing we had to buy for this was the tires. The materials were not too bad. The paint materials were a little over a couple $100 between the spray cans and the sandpaper, the filler primer. You definitely need, if you ever decide to do this yourself, you're going to need plenty of filler primer. I ended up needing seven cans, I do believe. Of course, I did have to strip some away, as you saw in the video. But I will say this too, if you ever decide to do this, I highly recommend go with a 2K product versus the rattle cans, especially with the filler primer, because the 1K filler primer just doesn't sand very well. The body work's not perfect. We do have a couple spots that we need to touch up, but we can definitely do that later. But right now, we're losing a little bit of daylight, and I'm going to take the kids for one ride. They have been dying to get on this thing, and I've been really anxious to get them on it and spend a little time with them. So that'll do it for this episode of Nothing Fancy. I got another project on the way that I'm excited. So be sure, if you like this kind of content, you like cars and ATVs and anything like that, be sure to give us a like and a follow. Thanks very much.